Introduction. The habit of blaming yourself. There is something many people do, quietly, constantly, and almost unconsciously. They blame themselves. Not just when something goes wrong. Not just when they make a mistake. But for everything. For things they said. For things they didn't say. For opportunities they missed. For outcomes they couldn't control. It becomes a habit. A way of thinking. A way of seeing themselves. The silent conversation. You may not even notice it at first. It sounds like, I should have done better. Why did I say that? This is my fault. I always mess things up. It repeats, again and again, until it becomes your normal way of thinking. And over time, something deeper happens. You stop questioning it. You start believing it. When responsibility turns into self-attack, taking responsibility is important. It helps you grow. It helps you improve. But somewhere along the way, responsibility becomes something else. It becomes guilt that never fades, criticism that never stops, pressure that never leaves. You are no longer learning from your mistakes. You are punishing yourself for them. Understanding self-blame. Where it begins. Self-blame rarely announces itself. It doesn't come with a loud voice or a clear warning. It lives quietly in your daily thoughts. It shows up when you replay a conversation in your mind, you think about something that went wrong, you compare yourself to others. You might say, I shouldn't have said that. Why did I do that? It's my fault things turned out this way. At first, this feels normal, even responsible, but over time, something changes. What begins as reflection becomes self-attack. And what begins as learning becomes emotional punishment. Let's make something very clear. Not all self-evaluation is harmful. There is a healthy process called reflection. Reflection says, what happened? What can I learn? Self-blame says, what's wrong with me? Reflection is curious. Self-blame is cruel. Reflection moves you forward. Self-blame keeps you stuck in the past. Example, you make a mistake at work. Reflection, I didn't prepare enough. Next time I'll organize better. Self-blame, I'm so incompetent. I always mess things up. Same situation, two completely different outcomes. Self-blame doesn't come from nowhere. It is learned, slowly, over time. Childhood conditioning. If, as a child, you were criticized, often expected to be perfect, blamed for things beyond your control, you may have learned, when something goes wrong, it must be my fault. Children don't question authority, they internalize it. What was once external criticism becomes an internal voice. Emotional survival. Sometimes, self-blame develops as a way to feel safe. If you believe, it's my fault, then you also believe, I can fix it next time. This creates an illusion of control. But the cost is high. You carry responsibility for things that were never yours. Cultural and social pressure. Society often rewards perfection and punishes mistakes. You are told, be the best. Don't fail. Don't embarrass yourself. This creates fear, and fear feeds self-blame. Many people live under invisible pressure. They expect themselves to always make the right decision, never hurt anyone, never fail, always be strong. But this is impossible. You are human, and being human means misunderstanding, sometimes making imperfect choices, learning through experience. When your expectations are unrealistic, self-blame becomes inevitable. Self-blame creates a cycle. Mistake happens. You blame yourself. You feel guilt or shame. Your confidence decreases. You perform worse next time. You blame yourself again. This loop repeats, not because you are incapable, but because your mind is working against you. Some people reach a point where everything feels like their responsibility. Someone is upset, right pointing arrow, it's my fault. A relationship ends, right pointing arrow, I ruined it. Something goes wrong, right pointing arrow, I should have prevented it. This is emotional overload. You are taking responsibility for other people's emotions, unpredictable outcomes, things outside your control. This is not strength. It is exhaustion disguised as responsibility. Self-blame is often rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, failure, judgment, losing control. Instead of facing these fears directly, the mind turns inward and says, it's easier to blame myself. But this does not remove fear. It only adds pain. Everything changes when you become aware. The next time you blame yourself, pause. Ask, is this truly my responsibility? Am I being fair to myself? Would I speak to someone else this way? This is the beginning of transformation. Not change yet, but awareness. And awareness is the first step toward freedom. What if, instead of blaming yourself, you became curious about yourself? Instead of, why am I like this? Ask, what led me to act this way? This shift changes everything. You move from judgment, right pointing arrow, understanding, shame, right pointing arrow, growth. There's some practice that you can do it. Exercise 1. Catch the thought. For one day, notice every time you blame yourself. Write it down. Example, I messed everything up. I should have done better. Exercise 2. Challenge it. For each thought, ask, is this 100% true? What is a more balanced perspective? Exercise 3. Replace it. Replace self-blame with, I made a mistake, and I can learn from it. Glowing Star Chapter 1 Deep Reflection. Self-blame is not your personality. It is a learned pattern. And anything learned can be unlearned. You are not weak for feeling this way. You are human, but you don't have to stay in this cycle. The voice inside, your inner critic. There is a voice inside you that never sleeps. It speaks when you wake up. It speaks when you make decisions. It speaks after you make mistakes. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it shouts. You may recognize it. You're not good enough. You always mess things up. Why can't you be like others? This voice feels personal. It feels like you, but it is not. It is your inner critic. At first, this voice may seem helpful. It pushes you to improve. It reminds you to do better. But over time, it changes. It becomes harsher, louder, more constant. Instead of guiding you, it begins to attack you. And when that happens, you stop growing, because you start fearing mistakes. The inner critic is not something you were born with. It is something you learned. External voices become internal. Think about your past. A teacher who criticized you. A parent who expected perfection. A moment where you felt judged. A failure that hurt deeply. These experiences leave marks. Over time, those external voices become internal. You start repeating them to yourself. Here is something important. Your inner critic is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to protect you. But it is using the wrong method. It believes, if I criticize you, you will improve. If I scare you, you will avoid mistakes. But instead, you lose confidence, you feel anxious, you avoid trying. The critic is like a strict teacher who never learned how to encourage. When you believe your inner critic, you begin to doubt yourself, constantly avoid opportunities, overthink every decision. You may stop speaking up, trying new things, trusting your instincts. Not because you are incapable, but because the voice convinces you that you are. Your inner critic is built on beliefs. Deep, often unconscious beliefs like, I'm not enough. I must be perfect to be accepted. Mistakes are unacceptable. If I fail, I will be rejected. These beliefs shape the tone of your inner voice. And unless you question them, they will continue to control you. One of the most powerful steps is this: create distance. Instead of saying, I'm not good enough, say, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. This may seem small, but it changes everything. You are no longer the thought. You are observing the thought. And what you can observe, you can question. Your inner critic speaks automatically, but you don't have to accept everything it says. Ask, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Would I say this to someone I care about? Most of the time, the answer is no. Example, critic says, you failed. You're useless. Challenge, I made a mistake, but I'm learning. One mistake does not define me. You don't need to silence the critic completely. You need to balance it. Develop a second voice, the inner supporter. This voice says, you're learning. You're improving. It's okay to make mistakes. At first, it may feel unnatural, because you are used to criticism. But over time, this new voice becomes stronger. The way you speak to yourself matters. If you constantly say, I'm not good enough, I always fail, your mind starts believing it, and your actions follow. But if you shift your language, I'm improving, I'm learning, I can grow, you create a new identity. What your inner critic lacks is compassion. Imagine a close friend makes a mistake. Would you say, "You're useless? You'll never succeed"? Of course not. You would say, "It's okay. You'll learn from this. I believe in you." Now ask yourself, why don't I speak to myself this way? Practicing a new inner dialogue. Practice 1. Awareness. Notice when your inner critic speaks. Write it down. Practice 2. Challenge. Question the thought. Practice 3. Replace. Create a more balanced statement. Example: critic, "I'm terrible at this." New voice: "I'm still learning, and that's okay." Changing your inner voice takes time. You will forget, sometimes fall back into old patterns, feel frustrated. That's normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. Every time you choose understanding over criticism, patience over pressure, you weaken the inner critic and strengthen your self-trust. Letting go of guilt and shame. There are things you remember, even when you try not to. Moments where you said something wrong, you made a bad decision, you hurt someone, you failed. Even if years have passed, the feeling remains. A heaviness in your chest, a discomfort in your mind. That is the weight of guilt and shame. And many people carry this weight for far too long. Guilt and shame may feel similar, but they are very different. Guilt says, "I did something wrong." Shame says, "I am something wrong." Guilt focuses on behavior. Shame attacks identity. Why this matters. Guilt can help you grow. Shame keeps you stuck. Guilt says, "Right finger, fix it, learn, move forward." Shame says, "Right finger, you are not worthy of moving forward." Healthy guilt is temporary. It helps you recognize mistakes, take responsibility, improve. But toxic guilt stays. It makes you replay the past, overthink every detail, punish yourself mentally. You keep asking, "Why did I do that? What's wrong with me?" But you never reach peace. Shame is deeper. It doesn't just say you made a mistake. It tells you that you are the mistake. It whispers, "You're not enough. You don't deserve better. You'll always be this way." And the more you believe it, the more it becomes your identity. Shame is often rooted in past criticism, rejection, failure, painful experiences. Sometimes it begins in childhood, a moment where you felt judged, embarrassed, not accepted. That feeling stays, and over time, it becomes a belief. Letting go of guilt and shame is not easy, because part of you believes, "If I stop feeling guilty, it means I don't care." But that is not true. You can care deeply, take responsibility, without punishing yourself forever. Holding on to guilt does not fix the past. It only damages your present. Healing begins with honesty, not denial, not avoidance. Ask yourself, what happened? What was my role? What did I not understand at that time? Be fair. Not everything was your fault. Not everything was in your control. You did the best you could with what you knew at that time. Acceptance does not mean, "What happened was okay, you agree with your mistakes." It means, "It happened, and I cannot change it." This is where peace begins. Because fighting the past only creates more pain. Every mistake contains a lesson. Instead of asking, "Why did I do this?" ask, "What can this teach me?" Shift from punishment, right pointing arrow, learning, regret, right pointing arrow, growth. This is how pain becomes wisdom. Self-forgiveness is one of the hardest things to do, but also one of the most important. Forgiveness is not saying, "It doesn't matter." It is saying, "I choose to move forward." Steps to self-forgiveness. Acknowledge what happened. Take responsibility where needed. Understand your past self. Learn from the experience. Choose to release the guilt. One of the biggest mistakes people make is defining themselves by their worst moment. But you are more than one mistake, one failure, one decision. You are a process, a journey, a person who is learning and evolving. Holding emotions inside keeps you stuck. You need to release them. This can be through writing, speaking, reflecting, even silence. Let yourself feel, without judgment, because what is felt can be released. Imagine speaking to your younger self, the version of you who made mistakes. Would you attack them? Or would you say, "You didn't know better. You were trying. You will grow from this"? Now give yourself that same compassion. Your past is not something to erase. It is something to understand. Instead of seeing it as a source of shame, see it as a source of lessons. Your past shaped you, but it does not define your future. Practical sum exercises. Exercise 1. Write the story. Write about a mistake that still affects you. Be honest. Exercise 2. Respond with compassion. Now respond to that story as if you were supporting a friend. Exercise 3. Release statement. Write, "I forgive myself for what I didn't know before. I choose to grow and move forward." Repeat it. Believe it slowly. Responsibility versus self-blame. Many people believe something that sounds logical, but is actually harmful. If I don't blame myself, I won't improve. So they continue blaming themselves, thinking it will make them better. But instead, it creates stress, fear, low confidence. The truth is, responsibility helps you grow. Self-blame keeps you stuck. Understanding the difference between the two can change your entire life. Responsibility is not about punishing yourself. It is about being honest. It means recognizing your actions, accepting your role, learning from the outcome. Responsibility sounds like, "I made a mistake, and I can learn from it." It is calm, clear, constructive. Self-blame goes beyond responsibility. It turns a situation into a personal attack. It sounds like, "This happened because I'm not good enough." It is emotional, harsh, destructive. Instead of focusing on the action, it attacks the person. Let's simplify it. Responsibility, self-blame, focuses on behavior, attacks identity, leads to solutions, leads to guilt, encourages growth, creates fear, looks forward, stays in the past. Example, situation, you fail an exam. Responsibility, I didn't prepare enough. I'll change my strategy. Self-blame, I'm stupid. I'll never succeed. Same situation, different mindset, different outcome. Even though it hurts, people choose self-blame. Why? Because it feels familiar, automatic, emotionally intense. And sometimes, it feels like you are doing something about the mistake. But you're not. You're just hurting yourself. Taking real responsibility can feel uncomfortable because it requires honesty, effort, change. Self-blame, on the other hand, keeps you in place. It feels painful, but it requires no action. Here is the key. You can take responsibility with kindness. Instead of saying, "I ruined everything," say, "I made a mistake, and I can improve." This small shift changes your mindset, your emotions, your future actions. This is very important. Not everything is your responsibility. Some things are outside your control, influenced by others, part of life's unpredictability. But if you are used to self-blame, you will take responsibility for everything. Ask yourself, did I truly control this? Am I being fair to myself? Sometimes the answer is no. Healthy accountability means owning your actions, learning from them, making better choices. Without guilt, overload, emotional punishment. It is balanced. You grow best when you feel safe, not when you feel attacked. If your inner voice is harsh, you will avoid mistakes. If your inner voice is supportive, you will learn from them. To make this shift, practice. Step 1. Describe the situation. What happened? Step 2. Identify your role. What part was yours? Step 3. Remove judgment. No labels. No insults. Step 4. Focus on learning. What can you do differently next time? Situation. You argued with someone. Self-blame. I always ruin relationships. Responsibility. I reacted emotionally. Next time, I will pause and communicate better. Which one helps you grow? The answer is clear. Ask yourself, am I treating myself fairly? If you were in a courtroom, would the evidence prove that everything is your fault? Or are you being too harsh? Fairness is important, because growth needs truth, not exaggeration. When you stop blaming yourself, something powerful happens. You begin to trust yourself again. Because you know, You will learn, you will improve, you will handle mistakes better. Self-trust is built through understanding, patience, consistency. 4.15 Practical exercises. Exercise 1. Rewrite the story. Take a situation where you blamed yourself. Rewrite it using responsibility instead. Exercise 2. Ask 3 questions. What was in my control? What was not? What can I learn? Exercise 3. Replace the statement. Replace, "It's my fault," with, "This is what I can improve." Moving forward, building a new relationship with yourself. At some point, after all the reflection, awareness, and understanding, you arrive at a quiet but powerful moment. A moment where you realize, I don't want to live like this anymore. Not with constant self-blame. Not with guilt that never ends. Not with a voice that keeps tearing you down. This moment is not dramatic. It is calm, but it is decisive, because growth begins with a choice. Many people think, one day, I will just let go. But it doesn't work that way. Letting go is not a single action. It is something you practice, every time you catch a negative thought. Every time you choose understanding over blame. Every time you forgive yourself again. Some days will be easier. Some days, the old patterns will return. That does not mean you failed. It means you are human. Your life is shaped from the inside out. Your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, they create your reality. If your inner world is harsh, critical, unforgiving, your outer life will feel heavy. But if your inner world becomes supportive, calm, understanding, everything begins to change. True transformation happens when your identity changes. Not just what you do, but how you see yourself. From, I'm someone who always fails, to, I'm someone who learns and grows. From, I'm not enough, to, I am improving every day. This shift is powerful, because your identity shapes your behavior, and your behavior shapes your life. Self-blame destroys trust. It makes you feel unsure, afraid, hesitant. But when you stop attacking yourself, you begin to rebuild trust. You start to believe, I can handle challenges. I can learn from mistakes. I can move forward. Self-trust is not built overnight. It is built through small decisions, consistent effort, honest reflection. One of the biggest traps is perfection. Waiting to be perfect, feel ready, never make mistakes. But perfection does not exist. Progress does. Focus on being a little better than yesterday, learning one lesson at a time, improving step by step. This is sustainable growth. Your mind has patterns, and to change your life, you must create new ones. Instead of automatic self-blame, practice conscious understanding. Instead of harsh judgment, practice balanced thinking. These habits take time, but repetition creates change. This is the most important relationship in your life, because it affects how you see the world, how you treat others, how you handle challenges. Ask yourself, do I support myself? Do I respect myself? Do I speak to myself with kindness? If not, this is where your work begins. Imagine someone you love deeply. You would encourage them, be patient with them, forgive their mistakes. Now imagine treating yourself the same way, not out of ego, but out of respect, because you deserve that same care. Your past is part of your story, but it is not your entire identity. You are not your worst mistake, your biggest failure, your most painful moment. You are someone who experienced, someone who learned, someone who continues. Moving forward means taking the lesson and leaving the pain behind. There will be moments when you blame yourself again, you feel guilt, you doubt your progress. This is normal. Growth is not a straight line. What matters is you notice it, you correct it, you continue. Falling back does not erase your progress. Stopping does. As you grow, your life becomes more intentional. You start choosing your thoughts, your reactions, your actions. Instead of reacting automatically, you respond consciously. This is true freedom. Practice 1. Morning intention. Start your day with, today, I will be patient with myself. Practice 2. Midday awareness. Pause and ask, how am I speaking to myself today? Practice 3. Night reflection. Ask, what did I learn today? How did I improve? Over time, something shifts. You begin to feel lighter, think clearer, act with confidence. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. That's all folks, hope you're enjoyed and I'm going to see you soon. Have a nice day.